You all for joining us for the conversation with colleagues for the month. Last month, as you know, we were planning to do a cybersecurity one that is currently needing to be rescheduled. One of our members has been in Baltimore dealing with some things that happened in Baltimore. So um, hopefully we'll get them back in a couple months. But this week we have the pleasure of having Jose and his panel. I'll let Jose introduce himself and the panel, and we'll get going. We'll talk about project controls. Thanks, Jose.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Tom. So today's discussion is on project controls, and it's with a few of our industry best professionals. Our hope is for everyone to gain new insight from our panelists regarding project controls on airport infrastructure projects and what it means to each of them when it comes to their roles and responsibilities at either DFW Airport or the Houston Airport system. So we'll go through introductions quickly. My name is Jose Enriquez. I work for HDR. I'm the Texas aviation leader for the company. And I'm very happy to have three friends on our panel today from Houston and DFW. And why don't we go ahead and start with Barry, since I see you on. Go ahead and start with you, and then we'll go to Igor and then Tammy.
Hey, my name's Barry Gardabled. I'm with Turner & Townsend. I am the project director for the major projects portfolio and the domestic redevelopment program here at HAS.
Igor?
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Igor Kosik. I'm working for the Parsons. At the moment, I'm working on the contract of extension of staff to Houston Airport Systems, and I am a project control manager, and I am head of the project control department.
Okay, Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Huddleston. I'm the Vice President of Design, Code, and Construction for Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. And I am probably the biggest user of project controls at DFW. We have a separate department who heads that effort, and I think we're probably their number one fan.
Awesome. So thanks for the introductions, folks. So today we're going to try and hit on 5 areas of project controls. There's many, but we're going to hit on 5, and those are program schedule, project delivery, capital budgeting and cost control, finance, and then project management information systems, or PMIS. So when it comes to program schedule, Igor, let's start with you as the project controls manager. What program schedule information is important to you when doing your job, and is it true that the schedule doesn't change on a project?
So for us, who is actually participating in the preparation of the schedule, I will say a couple of things about what is important for us when we are preparing the schedule. So program schedule is going to be used by many departments and by the many individuals who are involved in the project execution. They're going to have different requirements from the schedules. Some of them, they're going to look into the projects on the project level, specific projects which are under their responsibility, like project managers or design managers. But from the other hand, you're going to have like a finance who likes to see the overall information from the schedule, basically to see like the informations which are relevant to the whole program. So this is the biggest challenge that you can have on the huge programs that you have on all the major airports. So your schedule is going to be it's going to consist of the maybe even 100 individual projects. So many of them is going to have 0 interfaces with the other. Some of them, like airside projects, will have interface among each other, and you will be able to come up with a critical path, but you will never have overall critical path from your program schedules. And then you have certain challenges that you have overcome in the analyzing of the progress of the whole program. So for us, who is deeply into the project control, we are trying not only to give individual information to everybody what they need, but to give overall picture of the whole program.
So the most important part to you is making sure you're providing the bigger picture of the program.
Exactly. Yes, because
and it never changes, right, Igor? Like it never changes.
Of course it changed, and it changed a couple of times during the project cycle. So you have two different changes. So you have the your preparation of the baseline, and your baseline is not something that you are going to carry for years. Your baseline is always based on your capital improvement plan or capital improvement program, depends on how it is set up on your project. So every time when you have a new budget, you're going to set up your baseline for the whole program.
Sure.
But every time because all of your projects is not going to have only construction phase, it's going to have many phases, from the design plan, from the planning, for the design, procurement, construction, closeout. So basically every time when you're starting with a new phase of the project, you need to reset your baseline, because there is no point to measure the progress of the current phase with accumulated delays for the previous phases. And Jose, I hope that I didn't take.
Thank you, Igor. Yeah, no, it's very detailed. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move to Tammy. Tammy, when it comes to the program schedule, in your mind, what's important to you, and then does it change in your mind?
So it's funny, I started listing down all of the elements within the schedule that were so important. And I think I got down to probably 7 that I think were important for different reasons. Mm-hmm. So we look at SPI, the ratio of the earned value to the planned value, just to see the health of the project itself and to see how we are tracking. And then critical path is so important, especially with some of the supply chain challenges we've been having. If you have long lead time items, how does that affect your critical path? And of course, critical milestones. And I'll get into that with the second question. And then because we have $9 billion worth of projects going on for the next several years, the interrelationship between those projects is so critical. And we're at the point now where we're in the process of developing a dynamic model of the entire airport, that as you move from month to month, it shows the changes on the airport for that particular month. And it's going to give us a really great tool to be able to visualize what's going on. So wow. Stay tuned for that. It'll be amazing. And then another thing that was important too is contractual milestones for a schedule versus the actual schedule. Sometimes that's very important. Yeah. And then something with all the work we have going on is, from a schedule perspective, we need to understand the 3-week picture, the 3-month picture, and the 6-month picture. Because this past December, we actually started a monthly briefing to stakeholders so that we could prepare them for what was coming up, what was going to potentially impact their operations, and to have a conversation about it ahead of time if we needed to tweak something. And then your second question, is it true that the schedule doesn't change once the baseline schedule? I'm going to caveat that and say it's not necessarily true. And obviously, as you have change orders, unforeseen conditions, anything like that, if they have schedule impacts associated with them, then we rebaseline our schedule to reflect those approved changes. Yep. However, I'll give a great example. We are in the process of renovating one of our largest runways. And we had a drop dead date. That runway had to reopen by May 31st. No ifs, ands, or buts. Don't care if we had a monsoon. It had to open by May 31st for operational summer peak travel season.
That's crazy.
And the contractor actually, he bought into the Kool-Aid with us,
Yeah.
and they did an amazing job of getting that runway. Actually, they opened it on May 24th, a week ahead of time. But it took a lot of coordination with all of the stakeholders to do that. So that's why I say I caveat it. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, yes, your schedule gets adjusted. But for some critical instances, especially when there are operational needs driving it, we can't adjust it.
Good. Thank you, Tammy. Barry, and lastly, you, when it comes to the program schedule, what's important to you and when it comes to your job, and then talk about whether you believe a project schedule does not change.
Okay, sounds good. I have to agree with everything that my esteemed colleagues have said thus far. You do have a lot of details that have to be worked through. At the program level, I like to look, it all starts at the project level, and so you've got to be sure that the project is actually structured appropriately to give you the information that you want to have in the end. And that structure, obviously, we all talk WBS and so forth, but a lot of times, I've seen project managers in the past that think, well, okay, I get the schedule, schedule's good, we're running with it, but the schedule is really a collaborative effort between us and the contractor, because there's a lot of things that the contractor may not know about the site specifics, and it's our responsibility to help educate them on what's taking place at the site, any potential things that could impact their overall schedule. And as Tammy was talking earlier, when she was talking about the milestones, identifying the key milestones that take place throughout the project, because ultimately, when all this is rolled up to the program level, it gives you the capability of monitoring those as the project, progresses throughout. But it all depends upon what you're really looking for the schedule to provide as far as what's included in the schedule. For example, I've had projects before and where we monitored, we had them put in labor, we had them put in cost. Now, the thing with labor is we were able to monitor production rates because their attitude was with so many people, let's say 10 people as an example, we can put in 60 peers. You know, I'm going to an extreme, say within a week, but what we found out was their team only had a production rate, it was like 4.6 at this particular time. And so we sat down and talked with the contractor, showed them the trends over several months, and they go, yep, we understand we do need to increase because they were looking at the schedule from a different perspective. Good quality guys, they made adjustments, and we were off and running again. But it is a collaborative effort, and we can't, from the client side, we can't adopt a hands-off attitude and just throw all the responsibility on the contractor. It's a team effort, throughout. And as Tammy was pointing out on the delivery of the runway, the contractor bought the Kool-Aid, for that project, but he did so knowingly, knowing that he could produce what needed to be done by the end of that schedule. And I guess that's the points I want to
Yeah.
emphasize is a collaborative effort
Yeah.
uh, and defining what key elements you're looking for in the end to determine how to structure your schedules, both at the project level and the roll up to the program level.
That's good. So it never changes though, right, Barry?
Well, I was laughing when Igor only mentioned a couple times, and I like that schedule. It's going to change so many times throughout the course of the project. But the biggest thing is don't neglect the historical data. We begin with a baseline, and that baseline, you progress along that schedule, and then, you have modifications that change the schedule. I've had some people that just said, okay, we're redoing the entire baseline.
Yeah.
And don't forget the historical data. It's there for a reason. You need to know where you came from to get where you are today, because
Thank you.
you can utilize that to make adjustments as you go forward.
Yep. Thank you, Barry. So just so everyone knows, we're running about 5 minutes long, but I will get it. So let's move on to project delivery. And we're going to go a little bit out of order from the last run. When it comes to project delivery, when does project control start? Does it start in planning, budgeting, design, procurement, construction? Tammy, what are your thoughts?
The project control starts at the very beginning. It starts in the planning and even in some cases pre-planning stages with the project initiation by the stakeholders. So you have to you have to know how much your potential project is going to cost from the very beginning before you start moving through the stages, and an idea of the time frame on it. Sometimes operational needs trump the standard schedule for that type of work. So how do you factor both of those in?
Wow.
And sometimes knowing where you need to end up drives when and where you start. So it's very critical to start at the beginning. And then, of course, project controls is a part of every stage of the project through several different iterations in planning, through budgeting, several different times during design that gets updated. And then, of course, through the procurement and obviously the construction. And then even the closeout after the construction is, we'll say, done, even the closeout has an element of project controls too, to find out where you are in that process.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. That's a great summary. And, one thing that comes to mind is I've heard folks that actually think that, it's only necessary when you're in construction. And that's not true. It's important that you get a good handle on the controls early, so that way you know where you're starting, you know the road and the path to the final outcome, and it's much more than construction. So, Barry, what are your thoughts?
Again, I'm in agreement with Tammy. You know, it starts very early on. Probably the only modification that I would recommend, or from my perspective, in dealing with projects uh, over the course of my career, uh, I would extend it past project closeout. And the only reason I extend it past project closeout is you've got a design that's created, you've built it, you delivered it according to that design, but now the real question is the design performing as it should perform? You know, so I bring that into the asset management side as well, to keep tabs on understanding how the design's performing, how the overall project is performing as a whole, to see if you're getting the benefits that, the design team had presented to begin with, or if there's modifications that need to be, sometimes it's just a little tweak here and there that needs to be done. And if you have a good asset management team, they're constantly monitoring the output from your system through your BAS system. So I would say very early on and following through till the death, if you will, of the project. When you're looking to demolish a building and build a new one.
Barry, just again, and here's another side thought. You're talking about performance of the project, and that can mean a lot of different things. If it's a vertical structure, if it's a horizontal structure, but performance specifications, it was what came to mind when you were talking. There's a lot of people that are strong believers in providing performance specifications, so that way at the end you're getting what you want, and then
Yep.
you can manage it and monitor it in a real way based on what the spec says.
Mm-hmm.
Igor, well, what about you when it comes to project delivery and project controls? When does it start for you? Planning, budgeting, design, procurement, construction? close out?
So I will compare it with a story when young couple who just got a child went to the doctor, to the pediatrician for the first visit after 1 week, and then ask pediatrician like, can you give us some advice, like in a raising of our child? And then pediatrician tell them, you are already late. So whenever you start with the project control, you're already late. So there is no point in time. So as soon as you started, it's going to be better. We know that it's not always like that, but let's say that ideally it will be during the urban planning when you are actually the setup your plan for the future construction of the projects. And when you're playing with that plan, every iteration on your plan design, if you look from the cost and time perspective, it's going to be impacted. And if you are already there to support that effort from the early beginning and to give the your inputs on the changes in the budget that you projected on the early beginning and the time required to execute that project, it's going to be better.
Great, thank you, you all. Great discussion. On when it comes to capital budgeting and cost control, cost control begins during project initiation. How does cost control impact capital budgeting? And for that, Barry, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Okay. So I can't talk enough about capital budgeting and cost control. I'll limit it for
You got 2
this
minutes.
session. I'll limit it for this session.
You got 2 minutes, Barry.
Because, you know, I've never been involved in a client that has taken it to a level that I believe it needs to be. Years and years ago, I was doing a project. This was for a telecommunications company, and we did a whole CapEx implementation with them that basically any type of asset evaluation, any type of future project was all logged into the system at the very, very early stage. Those costs were modified throughout the evolution of it so that by the time the project actually started, they were there. But the greatest thing with this system was you were able to go and do what if simulations and Monte Carlo simulations on items to see if you wanted to push a project out, because every year budget is a struggle. You know, what do you fit into the budget this year? And it becomes a matter of prioritization. But what is that prioritization based on? Is it based upon the critical needs of a project? I mean, of the area, or are there some other political decisions that are driving the course of a project? So you have to always weigh those items. Now, cost control obviously becomes a major concern because, you know, you've gone out, you've requested for X dollars, and you want to live up to, you know, what you asked for. So you want to do a proper evaluation of your project to begin with to be sure you requested the right amount of funding. But the other thing is you want to control it to within that funding. I mean, from a project manager standpoint or a program standpoint, you know, it makes it a lot easier the next time you go to the well. If you managed the costs well on that previous portfolio or program, it's a lot easier to get your funds for the next one, you know, from that standpoint. But the other thing is by controlling it, you're able to manage the cutoff of that project appropriately so that those funds, if there's any funds remaining, can be released for other projects, you know. So you want to be sure and do that in a timely manner so that then those funds, if there's anything available, can be rolled over and another project be delivered, you know, within that time frame.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. You know what? When here's no side thought. Proper contingency, right? Like you got to make sure that you're a proper contingency. Tammy, what are your thoughts when it comes to capital budgeting and its, or cost control and its impact on capital budgeting?
So we use a process called the project lifecycle management. And a lot of that starts with our stakeholders. They identify needs and those are captured. But even at that time, there's a discussion on needs versus wants. And how do you control costs even at that stage of it? And then, of course, we recently signed a 10-year use and lease agreement with American Airlines. So as a part of that agreement, there is an established understanding that there are, I guess, two buckets of money. Part of it is associated with the ongoing rehabilitation of existing infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And then there is that need for expansion. So there are costs and basic schedule information tied to that document, tied to those two different buckets of money. Mm-hmm. And as we further refine that scope, cost, and schedule for each specific project, those capital needs, that capital budget is trued up within that forecasted spend. And just like Barry talked about, especially with the rehabilitation of the existing infrastructure, we may have to push some of those projects out further if we have some cost increases so that we can meet the budget requirements. So those are some of the methods that we use to try to stay within that bandwidth.
I would imagine grant funds impacts a lot of that as well, whether you receive them or not.
Yep.
So Igor, give us some thoughts on your end regarding cost control and the impact on capital budgeting.
So the cost control can have a big help in figure it out what is the total project cost. So mainly, we are going to have very precise estimates for the budget for the design and budget for construction, but that's not all the cost that it's going to be spent for each project. So on our infrastructure programs, we have a lot of master planning studies, different consulting services. We have a lot of in-house staff, and all their activities, everything what they are doing and how they're contributing to the project is actually project cost. So the cost control actually can help a lot capturing all of this cost, monitoring this cost, assigning this cost to the right projects, so that for the future capital planning, you can use those information to come up with the most accurate total project cost. And we know that something which we call industry standard, like how much is going to be cost going into the PMO services for each project, but those industry standards are vary a lot on the market, can go from 5 to 15%. This is a way too much to take for the big programs, which is going to like billions of dollars. So from that reason, cost control have to have a special focus on these costs so that we can come up with but as much as we can, accurate total project cost.
Going back to, I think Barry started it, each particular project with its budget within the capital program, if one exceeds its budget because it's not staying within its contingency, can have a negative impact down the road on all of the entire capital budget. So it's important from the very beginning, as you guys were saying from the very beginning, that you capture a budget that is adequate for the project, so that way the overall program is healthy. Agree with all of that. Good job. So when it comes to finance, this is a good one. Tammy, I think we'll start with you again on this one. When it comes to finance, how?
Yes.
Like, thanks, Jose. How is project controls important to airport financing, and how do you support the airport financing department?
So we're right at the beginning of a lot of our expansion program. And a big part of our controls is identifying the capital expenditure and understanding what is the best timing for bond sales. to fund some of that huge capital expenditure. If you do it too early and you don't meet your targeted forecast, then that has negative connotations. If you do it too late, then that definitely has negative connotations. So there is an art to that, and project controls is very important to that effort. And then you mentioned on the previous topic talking about grant opportunities.
Mhm.
That is a huge way to work with the finance department on what grant opportunities may be available. And then looking at some cost control measures, visibility, as I mentioned, on the forecasted capital expenditures, and then something that we've experienced recently, and I think the entire nation has, market challenges. Where are we with escalation, especially locally, because the local escalation is different from the national escalation.
Yeah.
So, how do you factor some of that in? And then another challenge, resource availability factors into it as well. So, some of the things that we've done to try to help manage some of that, we may only fund the design. And once we go through the design, that will give us a better handle on what the construction costs may be. And then that could be a decision point on, do we move forward with it as it is, or do we need to make further changes to fall more in line with budget or needs or whatever else may be driving it? And then some other thing that we've taken advantage of is we've worked with our finance department to fund designs with the intent of putting them on the shelf, making them ready for solicitation if and when we have grant funding opportunities. And we've been able to take advantage of quite a bit of that because we had projects on the shelf ready to solicit. And that's been very, very helpful.
Igor, from your perspective, how do you work with airport project financing, the financing department?
So we are working together to come up with a spending plan each year for the capital budget. And of course, during the year, there is many things which are impacting that plan. Sometimes it is the changes in the priorities. Sometimes there is a various delays into the project that we plan to appropriate this year, all the projects which are already appropriated and ongoing. All these events which are impacting the progress of either procurement or design on construction is actually portraying different cash flow. So the cash flow for each month comparing on the cash flow on our baseline is different. So updating the finance with the new cash flow on the monthly basis is going to help them to plan future spendings. And also, beside the overall cash flow, we are also giving them information on the spending on the fund level and also spending like OBO participation and things similar like that.
Interesting. Thank you, Igor. And Barry, when it comes to your role there at the airport, what is your involvement with airport financing?
Hey, that's an excellent question. I mean, when you're planning a project or a program, you're looking at the cost associated with those. And, in the private sector, you have this bucket of money, you go out and you spend, but when you're working in an airport environment, the structure of things are a little different, and so it takes a little bit more planning on things. For example, we've got a project that is going to be start construction fairly soon, and we were looking at how to structure the funding. So we've got the total bucket, but we needed to do it associated with the allocations, associated with the funding streams that Tammy was mentioning earlier, so that we could schedule that out over time so that we know when to get more funding. So one of the things that you have to do is, I've mentioned collaborative effort before. in some of these. This is no different. It's been a collaborative effort talking to our finance leader, our CFO, and it's been a collaborative effort talking to the contractor, trying to sit and talk with them, finding out exactly when we might need some of those funding streams so we could structure the allocations properly uh, when we go out to get the funding. Now, my situation's a little different. I think there's times where our CFO isn't happy with me coming in the door because with major projects, my projects have a tendency to be a little bit more costly. It's not like I'm going, I need 2 million. I'm going in and say, look, I need about 1.3 billion.
He doesn't like that, huh?
No, he doesn't.
Just a sidebar here. That was a good discussion. Sidebar. There's this project that I always love talking about. It's one we did in Tucson where we worked on a CMAR contract for the airport, and we worked with the CMAR basically to design and lay out a project, and we scheduled it such that it worked with their funding, their appropriations on an annual basis. So that way, the design was broken out, but then also the contractor had, he looked at his manpower estimates on a yearly basis, and he completed his work on that year such that he wouldn't take any losses, and then the next year would roll into the next phase, and it worked with the financing of the overall program, and it worked. So it was a very helpful, healthy situation between the contractor, the designer, and the airport to get the job done over I think it was like a 5-year term.
Yeah, that
So-
collaboration and transparency, of all of that's very important.
Yes, yep. All right, so last one, and we're making great time here. On when it comes to PMIS, now this is something that not a lot of folks are familiar with, Project Management Information Systems. What is PMIS to you? Why is it important to the project delivery, and who benefits from the information? So with that, we'll start with Igor. Igor, you have 2 minutes. I know you can go on forever on this subject.
Wait a second. I was pretty much good with sparing your time on the previous questions. So
You were saving it up for this one.
He's looking to recoup.
Okay, so PMIS is a web-based platform or a couple of platforms integrated into the system who is helping to manage the projects, who is actually serve every participant into the who is anybody who is involved into the project execution. And we can have like 2 different approaches to this thing. You can purchase from the vendor on the market platform, or you can build it in-house. So both of these approaches has pros and cons. So if you are going to purchase something on the market, you have to be careful that whatever you are going to provide to your organization have to serve everybody in organization, all departments. Otherwise, if you set up something with the people is not going to be happy with, you're going to end up paying for the platform that nobody is using, which is happening many times. You also can build something in-house, which is potentially also a good solution, but also have challenges like you need to be able to find a proper SMEs who are capable to build platforms which are on the appropriated level and something which everybody can be satisfied on the project. So lately we saw on the market that providers, the biggest providers that we know of these platforms, now they understood that they have to give you as a client, they have to give you a platform which is going to be like a one-stop shop for everybody onto the project. This could be potentially good solution, but the problem is once when it's set up, it's done deal. You have to use it for the many years in a way that it's set up, and you don't have many choices of upgrading or integrating something into that systems because it's very costly.
Yeah.
From the other hand, if you build something in-house and if you have a proper SMEs who's going to build it, you have ability always to change it, always to upgrade it, and always to make it in a way that organization is required. As I mentioned, the problem with this approach is that to find the SMEs who is capable to build something like that. We know that on market today, especially with the Microsoft, we have a tools which you don't have to be like a IT so that you're using, but you need the people who really know how to use it and who really have an idea what is the project management, projects control, what are the needs and requirements, and how they can help you with the building something that it's going to fit to your organization. So basically, it's a pros and cons for the both approaches. So depends what you are capable to do. But in both approaches, you need to have the people. But even if you go with the vendors who is going to provide you the system, you need to have people in your team who is going to dedicate their time and work together with the vendor to customize all the tools which they are providing. The same thing is with the SMEs that you are going to hire in your team, who is going to be able to customize what you need. So in both cases, you need the people. So system by itself is not going to do any miracle for you. So the people that you have is going to actually do the job, either building together with the vendors or in-house.
Thanks, Igor. So Barry, uh, what is PMIS to you, and why is it important to project delivery, and who benefits from the information?
Okay, so the PMIS system, I look at it as a tool that helps provide an adaptive, responsive organization. Because I have this saying, it's not the sharks, it's the piranhas. And what I mean by that, you look at data and you have big data, it's a single element, but what we deal with on a day-to-day basis in the project world are the piranhas. There's tons of things taking place throughout the day, and it's hard to manage that. And a PMIS system gives you the opportunity to highlight areas that are requiring attention. But it goes back to the garbage in, garbage out. You need to be sure that the data that's put in is the data that you need to go to something Igor was talking about, where he was talking about all the hard work and setting it up initially. Proper planning, needs to be there from the very beginning, because you need to determine what data you want to manage by. It's easy to say, oh, I've got these 150 items that we're going to keep track of, but what good is it doing you? Sometimes we're tracking data that is of no real relevance to what we need. So we need to be careful and set the structure for the PMIS so that it does give us the information that we need. And it really benefits all stakeholders. I mean, depending upon how the structure is. You know, Someone at the project level is looking at the data from one perspective. As you roll up, say to my level or to Tammy's level, you're looking at data from a completely different perspective. Now, you want to be able to drill down into the data to be able to address any questions you might have, but you've got to be careful as to how you set that initial structure so that you know what you're getting with. Um, So selective. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss. I guess the only other
Yeah.
thing would be, I talked about the planning, would be the structure of that, and how the information is stored, really goes back to how you structure that data for entry.
I've been waiting, Tammy, I'm giving you a hint here. I was waiting for Igor or Barry to say something about Power BI or dashboards. So with that said, Tammy, what is PMIS to you, and why is it important to project delivery, and who benefits from the information?
So actually, both Igor and Barry touched on it. We actually use a purchased platform as our PMIS.
Okay.
But it's one of those, you invest the time in setting it up. You also better be prepared to invest some money to improve on it later, because you're never going to set it up right the first time. So I think we've gone in to tweak it a couple different times. So you've got to be able to have the funds to feed the beast as needs change, and as you didn't get it right the first time. And yes, it serves as the source of truth for all projects. So that goes back to what Barry said. It's garbage in, garbage out. Because what we do is we take all of the information in the PMIS and we use it to create dashboards that display various different metrics, KPIs, parameters on all of our projects, on our contracts, on our programs. So if the data isn't accurate, then your dashboards may tell a story that you don't want them to tell. And that goes back to, well, is the project manager putting in the correct information that they're being judged by? So there's a lot of things you have to consider with the PMIS. It is critical, and there is always room for improvement in the consistent application and utilization of the PMIS. Going back to what Barry said, I may have one program that uses this structure. They put their RFI documents in this particular folder, and somebody else may put them in a completely different folder. So if you don't understand and consistently utilize that structure across all the programs, that's another derailer that we have to work on. And those, some of your potential topics included challenges. And those are some of the challenges that we have to deal with. And this comes down to document control. Document control used to be, where do we store documents in this particular file folder? And now it's, do you have it in the right structured folder in your PMIS? Or even something as simple as SharePoint. Are you using that same structure? And we're trying to get a handle on it, but that, I think, is probably an ongoing effort, and will always be an ongoing effort for any program. So critical, but it takes a lot of work and effort to keep it useful and accurate.
Yeah, it kind of, Big Brother's watching is what comes to mind in that discussion, because all of these things, whether you submit it, whether you respond to an RFI, whether you respond to a change order, what the cost of that change order is, all of those things roll up. This is all gathering information from design, planning, construction, and it rolls up into this executive level document where people need to review it and make quick decisions, or provide feedback to folks like you, Barry, Tammy, Igor, that says, hey, you're not hitting the mark, and you know why? And then you go and research it and you find out, well, maybe you're not hitting the mark, or oops, somebody forgot to input something or whatever, something really dumb. And it happens because there's a lot of information at a project program level that feeds into controls and dashboards. And that's why this subject is always really appealing to me, because there's so many moving pieces. And I don't know whether, it's like you have ADD or whatever, but you like watching all the moving parts, and there's a little bit of drama sometimes with some of that stuff. And that to me is exciting, right? Like getting into finding why certain things are happening. But it's a good subject, and I'm really glad to have all y'all participate in this. So thank you. Great timing. So Tom, I'm going to pass it back to you now that we're complete. I think we have a few minutes, just a few minutes to tackle any questions.
Sure. I think we had a question come in here a little bit ago. Dominic asks, how do you have information governance throughout the project with the multiple systems across all stakeholders?
Okay, who wants to tackle that one? I'll leave it up to you guys.
I can jump in
Good,
on
go
that
for it,
one.
Barry.
It is tough, Dominic. You constantly have to stay on top of everybody. With individual systems, but when you start getting multiple systems across the board, and I think this is one of the things that Jose was touching on a little earlier when he was looking for some of the keywords to come out of our mouths, is when you have these multiple systems, an application like Power BI helps tremendously in able to extract data from those different systems and bring it to a common dashboard for someone to view. But the administration of those, Tammy was talking about that. It's something that you're constantly working on, because no matter what governance you end up structuring and providing to people, you always have those that are outliers that, don't follow, they have their own drumbeat that they're working to, and they don't follow the proper protocol. And then what happens is, sometimes someone will stumble across it and say, hey, well, this isn't the right information, or it's not in the right place. And then you'll have someone, that goes back to an administrator and tells them, hey, can we get this shifted over? This isn't correct. And so they're able to do some administration on that. But it is something that it's day to day that you're working towards. But I hope that begins to address some of what you were asking, Dominic.
I can.
Go ahead, Igor.
Sorry, please, Tammy. Yeah.
Just to follow on that, in some ways, the use of dashboards actually helps you manage that structure better, because it highlights where the inconsistencies are. And then the person who's not following that correct structure, they get pointed out very quickly when you have a dashboard that's supposedly pulling erroneous, inaccurate information. So that helps some.
Getting called into the teacher's office. Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Definitely, dashboard will show you some anomalies that you will not be able to see. But when it's graphically shown, then you can see that something is odd, and you can focus on that one. And it's good if you set up your dashboard in a way to give you inputs like that. But basically, data analysis is a very important part, because there is so many information it's coming to you. So that information really need to be digested in a right way, have to be sorted, analyzed, and then presented in a way that whoever is looking at those graphs and numbers can get some conclusion. In another way to say is to get a story from it, so that you can read something which is meaningful and helpful for the decision making.
Excellent.
Eddie
Well,
says finance is his favorite part. And then he provided an interesting story about how proper planning is crucial. So if anyone else has any questions, please pop on real quick and ask them. Otherwise, I think that about wraps it up. Jose, do you have any last things to say?
No. Well, yes, just briefly. First, I really enjoyed, I'll let you read this one here in a second, Tom. I really enjoyed the fact that we had these close friends on this subject to discuss this. It's a near and dear topic to me again. And I don't really in talking to folks within our industry, professionals that are in our industry, don't have a real good grasp on what all is involved in controls. And there's so much. And by understanding it, even at a very elementary level, it'll get you so much further through the delivery process of a project, understanding what the needs are. And it provides you with a roadmap to success, because you have to start somewhere. It's good to start with the schedule, obviously, at your level, whatever it is, planning, design, construction. Start with that, and then expand that to other things like cost and resources and production, and all that, those things that are important to controls. But just understanding that how it all works, then that gives you kind of guidance on how to approach and tackle your specific area, whatever that may be. And go ahead, Tom. I thought I saw something come in.
It was a comment that came in. So
Okay. All right. Well, that's all we got, I think.
all right. Well, thank you, Jose, Tammy, Igor, Barry. Thank you all very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. If anyone on the line has any ideas for any future conversations with colleagues, please send them my way. My email address is posted on the South Central Chapter's website. So I appreciate everyone joining us today. It was a really interesting and informational session. It's really good to hear. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.